I am delighted today to have Dr. Krista Coombs here with me. And I'm really looking forward to this conversation, Krista, because I have been learning lots about Hashimoto's, about thyroid, and I'm really excited to kind of dive into it and learn even more from you. So hello and welcome to the podcast.
Awesome. I was really looking forward to this, Polly. So I'm really excited to share some cool, juicy information that your listeners will benefit from, and no doubt will color some of the conversations you have with them going forward.
Yeah, great. So Krista, I think a good place to start is if you could tell everybody what is it you do today, and really why are you doing it? What is your why? Because I know that you have got a bit of a story behind it all. So I'd love it if you could share that with us all.
Yes. So I've been in medicine. I've been in science since I could read. And I ended up doing Chinese medicine. I'm a biologist, and then I chose to do Chinese medicine for 4 years. And I've been practicing for over 2 decades. But in my early 40s, I started getting sicker and sicker, and I wasn't entirely sure yet what it was. And I suspected it was autoimmunity. I suspected it was autoimmunity against my thyroid. I went to my physician at the time, and he thought it was silliness that I was even interested in looking at that. But I'd worked with lots of fertility patients who had that, and I'd helped them through it. So I said, well, I'm going to do that and test it anyways. And so I tested it. I was right. And I remember the same morning that I found out my information. It was like 8:05. I came out of the clinic, and I sat in my truck, and I had a little cry, and I said, oh, well, I know that's what it is. And so that morning I changed my diet completely. Everything I thought I knew, I tried to implement. Within a week, I was a different person. So I went from being so sick and I could barely work, barely think, I could hardly put a sentence together. In early perimenopause, I was about 41 and a half, almost 42. And well, I was 40, I just turned 42. And to within a week, I could think again. And I started losing a little bit of weight, and I just felt amazing comparatively. So I said, oh my heavens, I have to learn about this. And so I just dug into everything. That's when I joined the Institute for Functional Medicine. I ravished their information because I was capable at that time to do that because my brain was working. And I became certified in functional medicine very quickly. And I've been practicing it ever since. And so my trajectory changed within my practice, where I started doing integrative medicine. I marry, that Eastern flair, which is very holistic, and, everything affects everything, and looking for patterns, with the functional medicine, which is Western medicine, peer-based, research-based physiology, chemistry, etc. And I married that, which is more holistic as well, with the TCM, the Chinese medicine. And it has been amazing. I ended up helping myself so much over this last decade, and hundreds of people with autoimmunity, including Hashimoto's thyroiditis, that I can't imagine doing anything else. It's life changing. So that's my why. It helped me become towards my best self. Every day I feel like I'm getting better. It allowed me to navigate perimenopause with way more ease once I figured out those things, and I committed to doing them for myself, because my why was so great that I need to kayak. I need to be fitter. I need to look after all my animals. I need to be a great practitioner for my patients who choose me. I need to be able to live my best life and think really clearly and not lose my mind, because my mind is, well, everything to me.
Yeah.
And I need to be a better partner. I need all those things. I need it. It's not that I want it. I need that.
Yeah.
And that's my life. And so if I don't choose me and do as much of the good stuff, the foundational stuff as possible, how can I be all those wonderful things to others? So that's what I did. I made a very strong commitment. I made myself a passion project, and I made it so that I didn't get so sick that I was dependent on my partner, and I didn't end up in a wheelchair, because I have a predisposition to, it looks in my blood work, it looks like, to MS. Ain't gonna happen. So I was pretty motivated.
Well, Thank you for sharing. And yeah, I mean, it's amazing, isn't it, what can happen when you kind of think, I'm going to make a strong commitment to myself, I'm going to choose me, I'm not prepared to suffer with this anymore. What I would love to know is, how long were you suffering, quote unquote, for before you got to that point? And also, you said you were really sick. How did that show up for you? What were the signs?
Mm. So that's a great question. And this is a pretty common theme for people with Hashimoto's thyroiditis, even Graves' disease, which is the opposite, the hyperthyroidism aspect. But we'll talk about Hashimoto's, which is what I was diagnosed with. Yeah, I look back and I think a lot of my 20s, even my 30s, and definitely my 30s, I was fluctuating with weight. I was fluctuating with depression, and it wasn't always socially induced. It wasn't because I always had, I had a breakup, and those were triggers for sure, but I wasn't always eating great, and yet I gained weight, or I wouldn't eat much and I'd work out a lot and I still gain weight, or my brain wouldn't always work. And I just look at those periods of time and I think, gosh, it was probably turned on a little bit back then. Periods where maybe I was on the birth control pill, or when I came off of the birth control pill and my hormones kind of went back to my kind of normal because of how I was living as an influence. And so it was kind of building. I didn't know it at the time, but that was building. I didn't have hypothyroidism at that time with blood work, because the doctors would check. I mean, why would they check? They check because I have the symptoms, but it wasn't showing up. Now I know that, Hashimoto's, you can have antibodies that are developing towards thyroid tissue, various parts of thyroid, and you have immune system destruction then of those tissues. You can have that for 7 to 10 years prior to needing it showing up on blood work that you now don't make enough thyroid hormone and you need a medication for it. So that was building for years and years and years. It would come in fits and starts depending on my lifestyle, stress level, exposures, whatever. Then around 41, I was going through a lot of stress. I was entering perimenopause. Everything was starting to kind of change with my hormones. I wasn't fully paying attention. I was so busy with my practice, like so many women, right? We're thinking about our kids or pets or work, or don't have enough money, or got too much money, don't know what to do with it, or whatever your thing is. And we just kind of take our bodies for granted. And I started getting super, super sick. Like I said earlier, I couldn't put a sentence together. I was struggling with words. I was slurring all the time. I'd wake up, early in the morning. I had to be at work for 10, which should be great, right? But I would stay in bed to the last minute because I could barely get out of bed. I'd get to work. This was a new clinic at the time, and which has its own stress because you're trying to build a new clinic. And I moved to a new town, and I could barely do anything. My libido was gone. I started gaining a large amount of weight. I went up to 199 for a 5'1" person. It was mostly all fat, and I started hating myself. It was just horrible. A lot of depression, a lot of body pain. I was losing some hair. But the biggest thing that was motivating me was the loss of mental capability. I wasn't as upset about the weight. I mean, I ended up being upset about the weight, but I was most upset about losing my ability to think.
Yeah.
It was I didn't realize how much I valued that. And so that's why I just, really got involved. But I'm sure it started easily 10 years, even more before that.
Is
It
that
just got
because,
turned on in perimenopause.
yeah, and is that because you were noticing that there were these underlying issues which were just kind of cropping up now and again?
Well, I only thought about it in hindsight.
Yeah, I mean,
I
it's,
honestly, at the time, I just thought, well, that's just who I am. It's genetic. I mean, even with all my training, I wasn't functional then, but with all my training, I was thinking, well, it's just how I'm built. I'm like my parents, or my mom. I'm going to be my mom. And I just assumed that society tells you that, so that's what I
yeah.
believed. right? And it wasn't until I got really sick. It was the losing the brain power, and I said, this can't be right. Even on a medication, you're only going to be feel a little bit better, and it's going to continue to decline. I think it was lucky for me that I was already in the industry, and I'd already worked with fertility patients, because Hashimoto's is so common in women with infertility. It's probably the second most common thing I see in my practice, outside of PCOS, which is on the autoimmune spectrum as well. So I was lucky that way, I guess. I mean, lucky, or that, the universe put me in that place.
I mean, it does just make me wonder, though. You said, oh, it was the brain power which made you go, right, I've got to do something about this. But you were living with all those other
Yeah.
symptoms for such long, and it just makes me really think about all of the people out there, all of the women who are living with symptoms. And it's the same with menopause, perimenopause symptoms. People put up with so much for so long. And
But you know why? It's because we're told to just get things done.
yeah, yeah,
And we're told that this is normal with aging. And who the heck came up with that? It's normal because we right, because we turn a blind eye and we say, "Oh, I'm busy. I have to get the laundry done. I have to go to work. I have to pay the bills. I got to look after these little rugrats. I gotta. And us gals, I mean, it happens to men too, but it's like a 15 to 1 for women. And we are trained in societies, I don't care where you're from in the world, we are trained to be the ones who do pretty much everything, right? And we are the masters of so many things. So we're juggling all the time. So I always say to patients, if you're juggling 10 balls and you're doing a great job, you've learned how to do that without too much damage to your body. And here you got another crisis that comes up, or a new job thing that's put on your plate, or another kid, or looking after grandkids, whatever you're doing. Oh, I can do that. Oh, I'll take that on. A family member gets sick. Oh, yeah, sure, I'll do that. And the 10 juggling balls, and they're doing another 5. Well, it isn't going to work. Your body will say no,
yeah,
and so many of us are just trained to do that. And we
yeah.
just assume that's how it's done. And it's negative to think, well, it's selfish if you put some balls to the side, because you think you've dropped them, but really you're just putting them to the side for later, or you give them to somebody else. And we're not trained to do that. We are told that that's selfish.
Yeah.
I remember my mom one time said to me, I was selfish for not answering the phone when it rings. I was like, where did that story come from? You know, that's quite a limiting belief. I think that's common. So many women, and I hear it all the time as people age. They're like, "Oh, that's just menopause. Everybody has hot flashes. Everybody loses their mind. Everybody puts the phone in the freezer, and doesn't know where it is. Everybody forgets things. It's part of aging. Oh, of course my knees are going to decline when I'm getting older. Really? Who told us that? Just because the average seems to accept that doesn't mean it's true. So it takes, I think, exposure to people who think like us to go, oh, it doesn't have to be that way. And we're sort of outliers, really. I
Yeah.
think, and we have to have outliers to have change. So as an outlier, it's our responsibility, I believe, to shine in a different light on some things that people assume are true, because it seems like everybody does it. You don't know everybody. So it's just your circle of experience. And so there's more outside that limited box of awareness. And as they start, developing more awareness of themselves and taking more ownership, and I think accepting that really everything that we are told are just stories. And if everything's a story, there's only certain truths that are true for everyone. Otherwise, there's stories. And if they're just stories, why can't we rewrite our stories and live a different life? It's because we have limiting beliefs that set a ceiling for what our potential is. So if you say, my mom went through menopause, or perimenopause into menopause, and she's still having hot flashes at 80, well, that means I'm going to have it. Well, then that's your story.
Mhm.
We aren't our genetics, not solely. We are what gets turned on and turned off on a regular basis. And we're not severely limited by our genetics. We are limited, I think, by mindset, our beliefs, our
Yeah, our
stories.
beliefs. Yeah,
I
absolutely.
think that's number one.
Yeah.
And then number two is, from those beliefs, really, we choose to put ourselves in different environments. So I say to patients all the time, the body you currently have, no matter what stage of hormonal life you're in or whatever life you're in, the environment you put your body in, if you have symptoms, the environment you keep putting your body in is not in alignment with what it needs to thrive. And so without thinking about perfection, you want to try and shift that over time to get the life that you want. And so you start, like you say, stop living your life so much by default and old beliefs that you've been trained to believe, and start living it more by design. And you can design that. You can rewrite a lot of that stuff. And I am proof, and so are you, but I'm definitely proof when it comes to Hashimoto's that you can turn back the physiological damage a lot, a great deal, and sometimes almost fully. You can de-age, you can age more gracefully, you can have a much grander life if you expand your awareness and you change the environment you keep putting your body in and support your unique body. You do that, and man, it's a game changer. It doesn't even have to be all the things, right? You know
Yeah.
this. It doesn't have to be all the things, but it might be, the epigenetic effect of certain people in your life that are they're draining all your energy. Well, that's an environment that doesn't support your best health. So you have to make those decisions to maybe carve some of those people away from you, and you start attracting the things that support the elevation of physiology and mental state that you want to have. But it could be as easy as, gluten. Gluten has changed. I mean, it's in everything. And we have a lot of sensitivities to that immunologically. Maybe it's getting rid of that. It's not hard. It's actually really easy once you make the decision. Those
Yeah.
kind of environmental changes have to happen.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you. Couldn't agree with you more. I think the difficulty is when you are really, most people have to hit rock bottom, unfortunately, before they make those changes. I think too many people just live with it, as you say, they just carry on because they're so busy. They then have to hit rock bottom. It would be so nice if actually they could, we could prevent them from getting to that point. But I think
I
that
think
only
we need
comes with
contrast,
awareness.
though.
Yeah,
We
I
need
think, yeah,
contrast, right? If you don't have contrast, like if you don't have sadness, you don't appreciate your happiness.
yeah,
And I've tried to help younger people with Hashimoto's navigate it with more ease by helping them make changes. Very rare, and I am pushy, and very rare do I see them consistently make good choices. They
yeah.
don't have the self-esteem for it, and they don't have the contrast. They haven't been sick enough yet.
I have the same with helping with people through perimenopause, through menopause. You have to be ready to accept help. And if you're not ready, then it's not going to work. And you
It's
can't,
not hurting you enough. It's not
yeah,
interrupting your
yeah,
lifestyle enough, or you're not dreaming big enough, or you're not willing to take the time to look at your stories that keep you living at a low level of function,
yeah.
actually, and not thriving in your life.
I think also the difficulty comes with our medical system. I
Wow, for
know,
sure.
that our medical system can be amazing, it can be life-saving, and there are so many brilliant parts of it. So I don't want to kind of slag off our whole
Mhm.
system, but I know that, for example, you were telling, I was reading about you and with Hashimoto's, with when you go and get your thyroid tested,
Mhm.
the doctors won't take you seriously. Or the same has been with so many doctors here as well about menopause, doctors won't take you seriously. And I think when you're sent away from a doctor appointment, because we've been, again, society has told us, oh yes, doctors have all the answers, they know everything, so I must believe what they say, then that is another reason why you just go home and you go, right, well, I've just got to put up with it, and don't realize that actually there is another way, there are more options, and it's just about finding out what they are. And thankfully there's people like you who can open up people's eyes, open up doors to different ways of doing it. So let's dive in to some of the things which happened with you. So can I just ask before we do that, what's the difference between Hashimoto's and hyperthyroidism? Because
Hyperthyroidism?
hypo.
Okay. Yep.
thyroidism? Because one, I mean, they're not the same, I know, but can you just explain the difference for me?
Well, in large part, they are the same.
Oh,
So,
okay.
yeah, so Hashimoto's can precede hypothyroidism. Hypothyroidism is where the thyroid can no longer produce enough thyroid hormone to serve your body's needs physiologically. So that's for growth, bone maintenance, brain health. I mean, so pretty much every cell, including your immune system cells, have receptors for thyroid hormones,
Okay.
T3 in particular. Hashimoto's is the autoimmune, the name for the autoimmune disease or condition is really how I like to say it. It's the autoimmune part. It's saying that it's the Hashimoto's, the autoimmunity that is destroying the thyroid to the point where it no longer can produce enough thyroid hormone. So Hashimoto's precedes hypothyroidism in the majority of cases. So it is estimated that 95+%, even 97 really, and depending on who you read, percent of the time, hypothyroidism is caused by autoimmunity. So
Okay.
Hashimoto's. And but what's the cause of Hashimoto's, right?
Yeah.
It's why would the body decide to destroy its thyroid? I mean, it is neck and neck with the number one autoimmune disease on the planet, not
Mm.
just in developed countries, on the planet.
Yeah, I
And
mean, the stats, sorry to interrupt, but the stats which you put on your website, 1 out of every 8 women will develop a thyroid disorder in her lifetime. I mean, that was just
isn't
nuts.
that staggering?
And 95% of hypothyroidism is caused by autoimmune
Right.
Hashimoto's.
I mean, you can have thyroid cancer. I mean, but again, there's a different route for that, and that can be autoimmune actually. And you could have an injury to the throat and you damage your thyroid, right? You could have a congenital issue where your thyroid doesn't develop properly. Those are other reasons that this can happen, of course. But the majority is because of autoimmunity. Why the heck is the body, which is very intelligent, wants to survive? Why is it trying to destroy yourself? Because you must have thyroid hormone to live.
Mm.
You can't survive. If I didn't get external thyroid hormone at this point in my life, I will die. It if there was an apocalypse and I would be stuck in stuck in thyroid hormone from a pharmacy before I would be going for food
Yeah,
to
yeah,
last me years. I can only produce so much. There's no other organ to do that, and I can't rebuild my thyroid. It doesn't regrow for the most part. So yeah, I mean, there has to be an environmental component to that. It's
uh,
not just hormonal. Yeah.
yeah. I totally understand that, but hormonal changes
Oh, for sure.
can really trigger it and make it worse, can't they?
Absolutely. However, why are there so many hormonal issues? You know, everybody goes through puberty. Everybody goes who lives long enough goes through a perimenopause into postmenopause, right? But if you live, that's how you go through that. That's kind of how our physiology is built. It's an evolutionary thing, I believe, and that's how we're built. All women are to some degree the same that way. But why is it so challenging? And the longer, as you progress through, puberty and you go through your 20s and your 30s and you get to your 40s, everything that you've been doing in that time frame is influencing how you're going to handle perimenopause. What you eat influences how much hormone you produce. How many nutritional deficiencies you have influence how many hormones you can produce. It's not just genetics. You have to have the building blocks to make those hormones. You have to have the building blocks to detox those hormones. You have to have the physiology that helps remove those hormones through your urine and your bowels. You must have the receptors, the building blocks even for receptors on all your cells to be able to have those hormones dock and do work. I mean, there's so many factors involved. But I think that, women are just, we are loaded with medications. We're loaded with birth control pills, which have major effects on nutritional status, major effects on liver status, major effects on brain health, major effects on suppression of natural hormone functions. We don't really think about it. And certainly it's not given. I mean, I used to be on birth control pills when I was a young girl. I wish I hadn't, but I don't remember ever having informed consent. Never. they just said, oh yeah, that'll help you not have painful periods, or that'll help you not get pregnant, or whatever. Never told anything until, you learn better. But most people I meet don't know a thing about that. They just assume, well, the doc tells me, so I'm going to do it, instead of questioning and taking ownership and self-empowerment of their own body and asking better questions. So the medical system has done a great job at training people to do what they're told. And they give away their power every time they go for a visit and do what they say. Anyhow, I think that all these things contribute to a disruption in how our bodies handle these hormones. And then you've got exposures to chemicals that are very similar to some of our hormones that mimic and make it, even if you don't make a lot of, say, estrogen, it may look like you do, and your body responds as though it does, because you're being constantly maybe triggered by BPA or another kind of, or not eating enough protein even, or whatever. Those things are on medications for whatever, blood pressure, or antidepressants, big one. It changes your gut microbiome. That has an impact on hormone production and hormone removal. So I think that women, we're under the gun, man. We have been through. We Not only are we under so much pressure to perform, we're not just staying at home having our kids. Most of us are also under pressure to do more, be more, look like more. Look at all the chemicals we put on our faces, on our bodies, on our hair. It's just, even in our clothes. I mean, you got to pick your battles, but we are exposed to so much, intentionally and a lot unintentionally. Some we have control over, some we don't. So I'm always telling people, look at the things you have the most control over. Do those, manage those. You'll do yourself such a favor. Even if you had 30 things and you did only 5, you still make an impact. Maybe you reduce your chances for cancers or other autoimmunities. And once you have Hashimoto's thyroiditis, because of the effect on your metabolism, not only is weight an issue, that gets worse during perimenopause for lots of reasons. Insulin resistance is one of them. Estrogen decreasing, and progesterone for sure decreasing as part of them. Leptin goes up the more fat you have. Leptin is immunostimulatory. You're going to increase your risk for autoimmunities. Once you have one, you're going to have more than one. The estimate is at least 5% more likely to get another one with Hashimoto's. You're 10 times more likely to get another one with celiac disease. But you're going to get another one if you don't manage it. So just taking a hormone, an external medication hormone for that, isn't going to fix it. It's an autoimmune process. So they're the same, but not everybody with Hashimoto's has hypothyroidism yet.
Right.
I love, right? The thyroid's being destroyed in fits and starts.
Yeah.
But it's not yet fully destroyed that you need an external source of hormone.
How can someone know that it is either Hashimoto's, or because some of the symptoms are very, very similar to perimenopause symptoms, for example. So how can you differentiate between the two?
Well, probably like me, where they knew they had symptoms prior. So it's exposure to this kind of information, and then it triggers the thought that oh, I wonder, and maybe it isn't, but it's so common that it probably is, and it's going to make perimenopause way more complicated and difficult to manage. So if you want to ease through perimenopause, there's a few things you got to do, and that's one thing.
Yes, right. But yes, okay, tell us, what are the things? Tell us some of those things which we need to do, which we can do to really help. Particularly if you're approaching perimenopause, and you might have noticed some of those symptoms. You might be thinking something was up. What if
you're struggling with weight, maybe a little bit more than you're used to, and people say, oh, that's just because you're getting older, or you're eating too much, or you're not exercising enough. Weight gain is not about lack of exercise. It is all about food choices. Food is information. It's food is fuel for performance. I tell my people in my group all the time, it's fuel for performance, and it's information. It's not all calories in, calories out. Different particles of food trigger different biochemical reactions in the body. And we are all unique with that. And it changes over time with all our exposures, etc. So it's information that changes. So you need to look at that and personalize a diet that totally supports your unique body. And that will help you navigate perimenopause alone, even, because that changes your hormones.
Do you
But
have any sort of basic kind of food advice you give to your clients, your patients?
sure.
What is it that you tell them? I know, I agree, everyone is very unique. We're all going to have our own unique experience, but what sort of advice do you give them?
Sure. Like, I mean, I have a group called The Easy Way with Dr. K, and that's kind of what I talk about with them. It's a 4-phase approach. But the basics are eat ingredients. Stop eating processed food. That alone can change your life in really big, powerful, positive ways. It doesn't mean you have to be, 100%, but you can. I am. You can be. So eat ingredients. When you look at the cart, at your shopping cart at your grocery store, and you put it up on the conveyor belt and you're going to pay for that, it should look like the ingredients to prepare. One of my favorite chefs is from the UK. Jamie Oliver. I watch him all the time, and everything I do, I'm a foodie, so I'm like, wow. And I do not eat gluten or dairy. I hardly ever eat grain or dairy, and I haven't for about a decade. And it is not a hardship. In fact, it helps me have win in my life, actually. But I adapt all these recipes. But he cooks with ingredients. It's a rare day that man has anything processed.
Yeah.
So your shopping cart should look like that.
Yeah.
As much as possible. So that's basic. I think that timing of eating is extremely important, especially for us gals. We're told eat 3 meals a day, eat all the time, graze, but you won't gain weight. Some women go, oh my God, I can only eat once a day and I'm still getting fat. You need to support your body with food. It's information, but it's also the building blocks. You cannot live without good food. You cannot live, well, that's not true. You can live with bad food, but not well. You'll be sick. Food is essential. Food and water are essential for life, and air. So if you manage those on some level, it's going to be good. But I like intermittent fasting. There's lots of ways to do intermittent fasting. But I find that when you start getting in your 30s and you're getting ready for perimenopause, you start doing that ahead of time, and you do more intermittent fasting most of the time. And you can eat for your cycle and change that up a little bit. You'll find that you don't gain the same amount of weight in perimenopause. Your insulin resistance will be way better, and your adrenal health will be better, and you'll be able to handle stress better.
So is that eating within a certain window each day?
Mhm.
Is that what you would recommend? So would that be like eating, say, in an 8-hour window and fasting for 16 hours? Does that generally
That's the
find?
basic one. That's
Yeah.
the one that most people start with, or you can build up to that. I think that's great. If you're still cycling fairly regularly, there's nuances to that,
Yeah.
that I teach people that, you need a little more nourishment during the higher progesterone stage in the luteal phase of your second half of your cycle, a little more protein or whatever, maybe in the follicular phase. But you figure that out. I mean, I teach people that. But in general, intermittent fasting, if you're doing a 16-8, so you eat only so maybe from 11 to 7 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
That's usually what I do.
So
And
what's happening in that time? So why is that helping, particularly with
so many
weight?
ways,
Yes,
especially
I
from an
know.
autoimmune perspective.
I
So
wonder if you
so
can
many ways.
explain why. I know why, but I wonder if you can explain
I,
why.
I don't know if we share the same reasons, but the way I see it, anyways, is the top benefits, I think, are you're eating in a certain time frame. It takes a lot of energy to process food, and so you got 2 main meals. That's enough. If you craft them really well, you're not hungry. You actually feel you have way more energy. So you eat that in that time frame. Then your body gets really comfortable with having 16 hours where it can repair your body. That's oversleep too. Repair your body. You sleep better because you're not eating in the nighttime and raising your cortisol and interfering with uh, sleep and fat lay down.
Yeah.
But it's it's an immune rest for those 16 hours, pretty significant one actually. Your body has about 75 to 85% of your immune system, all those cells that make up that really cool military, they live, their barracks are basically mouth to bum. If they're along that area and something called the gult, if they live there, anything you're eating, anything you drink is potentially going to be exposed to your immune system. Well, it will be. And depending on the state of your gut, It might even get in systemically, and then your immune system is upregulated. If you're not eating for 16 hours, that's a huge immune rest every day, where you're not causing so many triggers to maybe upregulate any kind of inflammatory response, to cause you more pain, more brain fog, more autoimmune triggering, more destruction. You actually have a time for cleanup. So that means brilliant. That alone, a gut and an immune rest, is staggeringly helpful for the body. Staggeringly.
Yeah.
You see such dramatic change with that. Those two things, ingredients, predominantly 95, 98% of the time, that's very easy to do. You just have to choose to do it. And you do it for a couple of weeks and you're like, oh my God, that's a game changer. And then intermittent fasting. I think those are my top two. The other one would be hydration. You need, most people, I think that's the number one thing I'm training people to do every day. Drink your water. And drink filtered water, drink clean water, that doesn't have chlorine in it, because it's a halide that can compete with iodine with thyroid hormone production. And same with fluoride, very similar structure. So half your body weight in ounces per day is kind of the general rule of thumb. Until you get super, super heavy, then you have to be careful. If you're going to the sauna or sweating more or whatever, too much caffeine, you need more. But that's the general rule of thumb. If they nail those, they barely need a geek like me.
Yeah. And then things like you said, for you, I mean, that was unbelievable when you said that in a week of not eating gluten, you suddenly felt gluten and dairy, you felt like a different person. So that,
yeah. So in that first week, I just, that day that I knew it was Hashimoto's. I just needed, for some reason, my personality at that time needed the proof. I mean, I knew what it was. I was right. And my doctor was surprised, but I was like, I'll fix it. And so I'm managing it well. But yeah, that week I jumped into autoimmune paleo eating. So now I do a modified autoimmune paleo with patients, especially when they have excess weight on and going through perimenopause and postmenopause. But at that time I was doing a very normal autoimmune paleo diet, and that was no grain, no nuts, no seeds, no eggs, no dairy, no, so gluten is obviously out of that if you're taking out grain. And I was so careful, and I felt phenomenal.
So that is eating vegetables. I'm just trying to think what that is leaving.
Yeah, it leaves a lot, actually. You'd be surprised. It's a long list of various types of vegetables. It allows fats still. It allows, good meat, fish and poultry. It takes out some of those things that are high nitrates, like bacon and whatever. Yeah. It took out eggs, because eggs are a really common thing to have immune sensitivities to, that you develop over time. And that's a big conversation. That's a very cool thing. But learning how immune sensitivities happen, I mean, that could be another talk if you ever want to. But it leaves like lots of vegetables. It leaves all your meat, fish, and poultry, lots of fats, good fruits. I mean, you can make a beautiful meals with just those ingredients. I mean, I've done it so many times with patients. And then you start personalizing it. I mean, there are people who stay on the autoimmune paleo diet way too long, and they lose tolerance to their foods. Their body just, because it's not eating it, it's going to lose tolerance. We have to find out
how long do you recommend for someone to do that particular
I think
diet?
the max for me, it depends on the patient, but generally 6 weeks is like as long as I'll go. Sometimes I'll go 8. It again depends on if they're very heavy, what autoimmune disease they have been diagnosed with, and their personality. I mean, all of it kind of blends in together. Yeah. But I won't go past 2 months with somebody. I refuse.
And with that diet, you often see a really significant improvement
within the first week.
Amazing.
Within the first week, they're losing weight. Because they're holding on to everything. The body can't handle it. But there's a combined reason for that. But yeah, autoimmune paleo is excellent. My Easy Way with Dr. K uses a modified autoimmune paleo approach. And then, but in the end, after those 6 to 8 weeks, you personalize it, because again, like I say all the time, you have a unique body, right? And so that gives you an enormous gut and immune rest. It also challenges your mindsets around food, which, eating disorders, emotional eating, with a lot, your EFT training would be perfect for that. Hypnosis training would be perfect for that kind of stuff, getting quick wins. But it's a mindset issue. So we have to work on that at the same time. Otherwise, it's not going to last. But they have to personalize their diet. When you personalize your diet, it might be this person might be able to tolerate eggs. This one knows they can't. And you only learn that once your immune system is very calm. But if it's always being challenged because you're eating all day long, every day, into the night, having, non-organic coffee every day, lots of sugar, lots of stress and all the things that precede going into perimenopause, your adrenals are just like, I can't do it. I can't even produce what you want me to produce. Or it can't communicate with the brain as effectively anymore because it's just been abused. It's just too much. Or your cells start going, screw this. I'm not taking in any more cortisol or any more sugar. We're maxed out. It doesn't even put the little fairy, the little receptor on there to even be a shuttle to bring it in. And you've got all this sugar, all this cortisol, all hanging out in your bloodstream, causing huge inflammatory responses. I mean, people are so sick going into perimenopause. Ladies are so unwell going, I was, you were, you wouldn't have suffered.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the thing. Your symptoms are as you said before, your body's wake-up call, almost your body's sign that something isn't right, something isn't working for you. And your body, I truly also believe that your body is here, it's on our side. It's not, it's
For
here
sure.
to kind of heal and help us. And so
For sure.
we've got to listen.
We don't have to, but then you accept the consequences. And when you choose to listen and not go right and not go, I can't believe. I mean, how many people have I met? I hate my body. I can't believe it's doing this to me. Why can't I just do what everybody else does? And I hear the whining. The whining doesn't support your best self. It just doesn't. You have to own what's happening. You own that you've attracted it. You own it. This is the shuttle that you have. This is the temple you have. You're not treating it very well. And so you have to, if you want something different, you must do something different to get different results. That's logic. It's a quote because it's true. I know it's true for everything. If you want a different result, you have to do something different. It doesn't have to be difficult though. It just has to be different. And the difference between something being difficult and different, that feeling difference, that energetic difference, is a choice. That's all it is. It's a belief. It says, I choose to believe this doesn't have to be difficult. That's why my program's called Easy. Because really, truly, you can develop, this. I mean, you know this so well because you teach this. Mindset is almost 100% of all of this because you have to make choices to do things differently. You also have to start being more aware and being comfortable with being more aware. It's not, I tell people, I say every day, and I tell myself this every day, I need to get in my discomfort zone somewhere, someday, some part of every single day. If I don't, I will not grow. I live by default. And so even on my rough days, that is a choice to be uncomfortable. What happened there? And I go, okay, I'm in my discomfort zone. How do I navigate out of this and up-level my life? Through choice. I do this every day.
Yeah.
And so that I have a promise to myself that I want to be better every day on some level. And I'm not aiming for perfection because it doesn't exist. It's a myth. But I am aiming for greatness within myself. And so that happened in perimenopause. Perimenopause is such a freaking amazing time for us gals. It is like the crucible where you just like an alchemist just says, we're going to make you into gold. And it really can happen. But it can only happen if you choose to stay in the crucible and do the work. But if you go into perimenopause, super stressed, super sick, gaining weight, your estrogen levels are like through the roof, you're having heavy bleeding, you're not paying attention to that, you got iron deficiencies, your B12 is like tanked, all your Bs are tanked because you've been on birth control for 50 years. Like if all those things are happening and you're just saying, I can't, massage is my self-care. A massage every 6 months is your self-care. Maybe every week would be. If that's what you think self-care is, then you've missed the boat. And if you want to get on the boat and go like on a really great cruise, you have to do some work and think a little differently about your life, because perimenopause is going to be freaking tough.
Yeah.
And then, you're
Yeah,
suffering a lot and you decline really fast going into postmenopause.
you're right. You have to make that choice between suffering through perimenopause or getting a bit uncomfortable and doing something different. But
Yep.
actually, what's on the other side of that uncomfortableness is just brilliant, because
Sure.
you are growing, as you say, you are growing, you're becoming more in tune with your body and with yourself, and that is such a beautiful thing. And it's not, I'm not saying everything is always perfect. It's not, but you, at least you feel like you are in control to a certain extent of what is going on. I think I hear so often from women, they just feel so out of control of what actually, what they're experiencing. And that's a horrible thing, to feel
Yeah, but the reason
disempowered.
they feel out of control is because they're not taking ownership.
Yeah.
They don't have to become a scientist to be able to make change. They just need to have a guide on the side, like we are. We're guides on the side who know more. And you find the person you resonate with, you listen to them, and you say, I wonder. If you don't look at your world with wonder, nothing's ever going to change. If you're always looking at it from a place of blame and somebody else's fault and somebody else's responsibility to make your life healthy or happy, well, it's never going to happen. It doesn't work that way. So, but there are people who don't want to grow.
Yeah. And I
They
think it's
and they're not my people.
And I think also it's too easy to kind of go, oh, well, I can't afford to get that
Yeah,
guide on the
that's an
side.
excuse.
And exactly, that is an excuse. And I think, again, that's just another reflection of the system that we all live in, because it's like, I'm not important enough to invest in
That's
myself,
right.
to invest in
That's
my
all that
health.
is. They don't see the value yet. Maybe they're not sick enough to even see the value of something else. And then they also believe it's the answer is outside of themselves. It isn't. All the answers we have, they're inside us. The solutions are inside us. But it's mostly choice. When you make a different choice, you get a different result. If I choose not to eat an ice cream, I'm definitely going to have a different result. And if I do that often enough, I'm going to have a very different result. All it takes is even a half a degree change, and you're going to end up somewhere else if you were
Mm.
going on a path. So, it all comes down to that. And I often say to patients and, well, family, whoever, that if you invest in your future now, that like you have a dream, you must know why you want to be well. So if you invest in your future today, it might take away from an instant gratification choice. So that's the investment piece, right? Not necessarily only money. If you invest now to learn something, your future is so much easier. And I think intuitively most people know that. They're like, yeah, but I don't have time, or I don't have the money, or I got to work too much. I can't batch cook my food, or oh my God, they bring muffins to work. That's my breakfast. I rely on that. You have to make a choice to have a different future. And the investment up front might be a little bit more intensive for a little bit, but the payoff is a long time. You end up with a long health span. You don't just end up with a long life. You'll end up with a longer health span. What does that mean? Well, that's more expensive actually. If you live longer, you got to have more money. Number one. But if you were really sick, you probably spend all that money anyways, but just live less time. But the benefits are the payoff is so lucrative. You get to maybe hike or do all the things you would love to do. You travel, hang out with your grandkids till you're 80, and you can actually have a conversation with them. Like the payoffs, you have to think about why you want to be well. If people don't think about that, there's no motivation to even do an investment. So if they say it's too expensive, they don't know the value. And that's our job, to teach them what the value is.
Mm.
And then we are the guides on the side that deliver the path to transformation.
Yeah.
I can't make them transform, neither can you. But we can give them the path, and we can teach them how to personalize their own path to transformation. But the initial desire has to come from a place of awareness and understanding of value. Then it's priceless. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter if it's $80,000. It's priceless because you see the value. Um, yeah, I think that's everything.
Yeah, I agree. you can't put a price on that transformation, really. It's everything. I mean, and
Well, the price, I guess, is the opposite. What would happen if I don't do anything different?
Yeah,
Well,
can you
right
afford
now,
not
you go,
to?
I mean, think about when we were going into perimenopause, what were we doing? You were raising kids. I was, doing all your things. For me, I was like stressed out all the time running a business on my own, like, and high level. Like, I was intense stuff, trying to help people make babies and all of the things, and I put myself last all the time. I went into perimenopause very stressed, very hormonally out of whack because of the way I was eating and sleeping and lack of sleep and alcohol and all the things to kind of get through life. I was just getting through life. I mean, I never respected what my life was or even could be. And when you go into perimenopause like that, especially if you're estrogen dominant, the chances of having an autoimmune condition turn on are extremely high. But you can soften that. You can certainly slow it down or turn it off. You can even get it into remission. It's not a cure, but you can get it into remission. If you go back to bad lifestyle habits, it's easy to trigger it and have flares.
Yeah, well, I think if anyone's listening, I think if anything is going to help encourage them to really look at the way that they are living and they're eating, then that's what you just said is it. If you are
I
coming
hope
into
so.
perimenopause not in a good place, the fact that there's a higher risk of autoimmune is really, that should spur you on to really look at what you're doing. Gosh, we could chat all day, I think, but
We missed so many opportunities here because there's like, the effect of HRT during perimenopause to try and if somebody has autoimmune turned on, how that can soften things, or
yes,
right, how to eat
yes,
to have your estrogen naturally lower, progesterone, the importance of that balancing out. The progesterone and the androgens like testosterone are very immune suppressive in general, whereas estrogen, when it's really dominant and it's some months in perimenopause, becomes either frankly dominant, like some people with heavy bleeding, or it's relatively dominant. It's very immune stimulating for most things. So that would be a fun conversation. I thought that's what we were going to talk about, but I'm glad we talked about what we did. But yeah, there's so much. But
yeah.
honestly, if they just did the fundamentals, all they need to do is the fundamentals. You lay a solid foundation for your house, the house you want to build, the body you want, intuitively is possible, and the experience that's possible. If you don't lay the foundation first, which is what you and I teach, you lay that, and that applies to every woman. You lay that, and then you can play. You can tweak things with HRT, hormone replacement therapy. You can, if you need it at all, you can tweak it with certain types of exercise or not. If you've got the foundation laid, you are coasting and you've got a way longer health span, guaranteed, guaranteed. And we can do the testing to prove it. And, I do that all the time with people.
Yeah. My last question I ask all my guests is, because this is called the Positive Perimenopause Podcast, and I like to give everyone something to take away with which they can put into practice. I mean, there are so many things which we've spoken about today which they could implement, but if you could just give one, what would that be to
One
help them have
positive.
to help them have a positive perimenopause?
Eat ingredients.
Yeah.
Eat really. That I think is feed your body. That is the most important pillar for success. Foundational pillar for success. Eat for your body. It must be ingredients. That that one thing. That one thing changed my life, and allowed me to set a better foundation to do other things to even make it better. So yeah, that's the one thing, guaranteed. Yep, because it'll affect their stress levels. And if you're
Yeah.
stressed going into perimenopause, good luck.
Yeah, exactly. That has massive effects, as we know. Krista, where can people find you if they want to find out more about you? They want to sign up with one of your programs. Where can they come?
Yeah, so I have a website called drkristacoombs.com, and that's where they can learn more about Hashimoto's and hypothyroidism predominantly, but that's not all I work with. I have a really awesome program called The Easy Way with Dr. K, and it's at theeasyway.ca. It rhymes. theeasyway.ca. And that's where we do a group program, and I teach people the foundational 4 pillars for success from a functional medicine point of view. And it works for everyone. It's a great weight loss resistance program and mental program. In fact, we should have you on there to talk, because I love some of the mental stuff that you do, and that would be very encouraging for people. But yeah, they can find me at theeasyway.ca. I do have a freebie if you want to give it to them.
I'll put it in the show notes. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'll put the link to the show notes.
All right. Yep. And it's a document that is how to navigate Hashimoto's and hypothyroidism with ease. Well, the easy way.
Okay.
And I've updated that and made it something that would be applicable to your listeners, people who are motivated for change.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much. It's been so brilliant chatting to you and hearing your story, hearing you talk about all of this with such depth and knowledge and enthusiasm. And, thank goodness people like you are in the world to
Thank goodness
help
people
others,
like us are in the world. Right.
Exactly.
There.
Exactly.
You're awesome.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you.
My pleasure. I loved being here.
Oh, right. I'm going to press stop.